Life was never fair, was it? You come into this world with nothing, surrounded by lies they call hope and promises they call truth. You grow up believing in their rules, their justice, their twisted version of what's right, only to realize it's all just a game rigged against you. Oh, they'll tell you to keep going, to play by their rules, to dream big because hard work always pays off. Lies. It's a cruel joke they tell themselves to feel better about the broken system they've built. And I've seen the cracks in it, the filth hiding beneath the surface they keep polishing. They think a fresh coat of paint hides the rot, but I've smelled it, tasted it, lived it. They won't admit it, but the world is built on blood, not progress, and I've bled more than most. They don't like to talk about the cost, do they? They whisper about the sacrifices, the people left behind, the dreams crushed underfoot, but they'll never say it out loud. It's easier to pretend those losses are necessary, unavoidable, part of the grand design. But I've seen the truth. Those sacrifices aren't for the greater good. They're for greed, for power, for control. And they've made me their scapegoat, their shadow to blame when things fall apart. Oh, they hate me because I don't play their game. I don't bow to their kings. I don't beg for scraps from their tables. I take what I need, and I destroy what stands in my way. That scares them because it reminds them how fragile their world really is. Fragility. That's the word they hate the most. They build their empires on the backs of the desperate, on the shoulders of the forgotten. But they don't see the foundation crumbling beneath them. They think power makes them untouchable, but power is just a leash they've tied around their own necks. The higher they climb, the farther they have to fall. And I've made it my mission to cut those leashes one by one. They call it chaos, destruction, madness. I call it justice. Not the kind they preach about, the kind they sell to the highest bidder, but real justice, the kind that burns. Oh, they'll cry about it, won't they? The ones who never knew suffering, who've never had to fight for their lives, will cry the loudest. They'll call me cruel, heartless, a monster. They'll twist the story to make themselves the victims because they can't face the truth. The truth is, they made me. Every scar, every wound, every drop of blood I've spilled is on them. I didn't wake up one day and decide to be this way. They pushed me, broke me, molded me into something they could fear. And now they regret it because they can't control what they've created. Control. That's their favorite illusion, isn't it? They cling to it, build their laws and systems around it, thinking they can tame the chaos of the world. But chaos isn't something you can tame. It's alive, breathing, waiting for the moment when their grip slips, when their arrogance blinds them, and then it strikes. I've learned to live in that chaos, to thrive in it. I don't need their rules, their structure, their lies. I've become something they can't understand, something they can't stop. And that terrifies them. They should be afraid. They should look over their shoulders, hear my footsteps in the silence, feel my shadow in the dark. Because I'm not going anywhere. I'm the consequence they thought they could avoid, the nightmare they can't wake up from. I don't do this for revenge, for glory, for some misplaced sense of justice. I do this because someone has to. Someone has to remind them that their actions have consequences, that they can't just take and take without losing something in return. They'll never understand, of course. They'll call me a villain, a criminal, a madman. But I don't care about their labels. Labels are for the weak, for the ones who need validation, who need the world to see them a certain way. I've moved beyond that. I don't need their approval, their understanding, their pity. I only need the fire inside me, the one they lit and thought they could extinguish. That fire burns hotter than ever, and it will consume everything they've built. And when it's over, when the world they've tried so hard to control lies in ashes, they'll finally see the truth. Not all monsters are born. Some are made. And some of us learn to embrace the darkness they tried to bury us in. Because in that darkness, I found freedom. In that darkness, I found power. And in that darkness, I've become unstoppable. They always believed the darkness me was something to be feared, to be pushed away, to be conquered with their artificial lights and hollow promises. But they never understood the darkness. They never realized it's where truth hides, where masks fall, where the games they play lose their meaning. I've lived in that darkness, thrived in it, let it shape me into something they can't comprehend. They call it evil because it doesn't fit into their sanitized version of the world. But evil is just a word they use to describe what they're too cowardly to face. The world they've built is a machine, and they're the cogs spinning endlessly, believing they're part of something grand. They don't see the oil dripping, the rust spreading, the gears grinding themselves to dust. They call it progress. But it's decay wearing a mask. I've seen the way they scramble to fix the cracks, to silence the voices that remind them of their failures. They'll patch one hole and call it a solution, all while the foundation crumbles beneath their feet. And then they wonder why everything collapses. Oh, they'll blame someone, anyone, but themselves. It's always someone else's fault, isn't it? The rebels, the outcasts, the ones who refuse to kneel. They'll point their fingers and say we're the problem, that we're the reason their utopia's falling apart. But their utopia was never real. It was a lie they sold to themselves to sleep better at night. And now the lie is unraveling, thread by thread. And they're too blind to see they're the ones pulling at the seams. I've watched them twist the narrative, rewrite the story to suit their needs. They call themselves heroes, saviors, the architects of a better tomorrow. But their hands are stained with blood, their pockets lined with the spoils of suffering. They preach about peace while they sharpen their knives, whisper about unity while they divide and conquer. And they wonder why the world is broken. They wonder why people like me exist, why the shadows grow thicker, why the fire spreads faster. It's because of them. They created this chaos, and now they're drowning in it. But instead of facing the truth, they double down, build their walls higher, tighten their grip. They think strength lies in control, but control is an illusion. It's like holding water in your hands. No matter how tight you squeeze, it slips through your fingers. And when it's gone, all you're left with is emptiness. They'll never admit it, of course. They'll keep pretending they're in charge, that they're the ones pulling the strings. But the strings are frayed, tangled, snapping one by one. And when the puppet show ends, they'll look around and realize they've been dancing to someone else's tune all along. They think they're the masters, but they're just pawns, just as trapped as everyone else. But me, I cut the strings a long time ago. I don't play their games, don't follow their rules. They hate that, fear it, because it reminds them of their own chains. They call me a monster, a madman, but I'm just free to see the world as it is, not as they want it to be. Free to act without their constraints, to move without their chains. And that freedom terrifies them because it's something they'll never have. They've built their lives on lies, on the illusion of safety, of stability, of control. But the world isn't safe, isn't stable, isn't something you can control. It's wild, chaotic, unforgiving. And they've spent so long trying to tame it, to bend it to their will, that they've forgotten how to survive in it. They've forgotten what it means to struggle, to fight, to adapt. And when the walls they've built come crashing down, they won't know how to live in the ruins. But I will. I've lived in the ruins my whole life, I've walked through the ashes, felt the heat of the flames, tasted the bitterness of survival, and I've learned to thrive in it, because the ruins aren't the end, they're the beginning. They're where the masks come off, where the lies fall away, where the truth stands naked and undeniable. They're where the strong rise and the weak fade into the shadows. And when the dust settles, they'll look to me for answers, for guidance, for salvation. But I'm not their savior. I'm not here to fix what they've broken or to rebuild what they've destroyed. I'm here to remind them of the price they've paid, of the cost they refuse to acknowledge. I'm here to be the shadow they can't escape, the fire they can't extinguish, the voice they can't silence. Because they need to understand, once and for all, that the world doesn't belong to them. It belongs to the chaos, to the darkness, to those of us who've learned to embrace it.